Hi, this is Tatyana. She is currently a senior storyboard artist at Lucasfilm Animation in San Francisco. She has worked as a 2D animator, animation director, cinematic director, character designer, background designer, and a storyboard artist. She has worked on shows, video games, and features such as Star Wars, video games like For Honor, Roller Champions, and Rainbow Six Siege, and films like Fears of the Dark and Little Boy. Hello, Tatyana.
Hello, Yolanda. Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
So why don't we just get started with how you got started in the field?
I started in France. I studied 2D animation in a school called ESAAT in north of France, Trouver, small town. And what got me into the field, my very first step in the animation field was an internship. So internships are huge. And after that internship, I was able to stick around. I first started with traditional paper animation, and so I quickly felt like after my first gig on the feature film Fears of the Dark that it was going to be hard to find more jobs in traditional paper animation. So what I did back then in France is that I took my sketchbook with me. I took little samples of traditional paper animation I had on a CD back then, and I would just like knock on the doors of all the animation studios. For anyone who knows Angoulême, this is such a small town, but they have like over 12 animation studios, and it was back then. They probably have more today. I would just knock on the doors, show my work, and say, I would love to learn digital 2D animation because I can feel traditional paper animation is dying and I'm willing to learn. Blue Spirit is the studio who gave me my chance. And again, an internship is what allowed me to kick the door, to basically put my foot in the door. So they gave me this like 1.5 month internship where I had to learn Flash animation. Flash is today called Animate. And it was really rough. For 1.5 months, I thought I was just like struggling, and I was. But I guess I wasn't struggling bad enough for them not to want to keep me. The whole like asking questions, being curious kind of worked out. And so because I was so curious and asking so many questions, they're like, all right, she's willing to grow and learn, so we'll keep her. That's when I started my career as a Flash 2D animator. So Flash being called Animate today, basically it's like puppet animation, using symbols, but then you can also draw a lot. And after about 2 years of working in Angoulême in France, me and my husband, we wanted to move to the States. We really wanted to, because we wanted to learn English. We knew it was going to be good for our careers. We wanted to move abroad, and I was lucky enough to be born with a US citizenship because my dad was American. Even though I had no connection whatsoever with the States, at least I had the citizenship. So we moved with a backpack and a luggage, and I continued working in LA after that, which is a different story. But really what got me into the field, I would say, were these 2 internships. They were like, really, that's what I needed to get started.
And would you say moving to LA was a really pivotal moment for you in your career?
Yeah, it was huge. It was huge for so many reasons. I mean, it was really rough though, because when you show up with just your savings, your backpack and your luggage, and you're like reaching out to people, basically no one really gave me my chance, you know. When you're an animator, the first step in order to get a job is to get an animation test. And the thing is, I wouldn't even get an animation test. So I wasn't even given the opportunity to show my skills. I would call, I would send emails, I would show my blog. And the thing is, a lot of 2D animation studios in LA, what they do is that they recruit people by word of mouth. They don't have like a full department of folks who are going to go through resumes and demo reels. And so the word of mouth to get in that was a real challenge.
Tell us about how you ended up actually breaking into the animation industry in LA.
So for about 1.5 months, maybe a couple of months, I couldn't find anything, like I said. The thing is, before I left France and moved to LA with my backpack and my luggage, living in a hostel, trying to find a place to stay at, reaching out to all these studios, before I did all that, I had connected with a bunch of people on LinkedIn. And what I did with those people is that I wasn't saying like, hey, I'm a 2D animator in France, I need work, can you help? I would just say, I'm a 2D animator, you're a 2D animator, you live in LA, I live in France, I want to move to LA, tell me about your life. Just what it's like for you to be a 2D animator in LA. Do you like the job? Do you like the folks? Do you like the culture? And I would just like start conversations with them like that. because I'm a huge fan of watching people and learning about their stories. Like, I usually meet people on a daily basis when I take the bus, because I draw all the time on the bus, and whenever I meet people because they talk to me because I'm drawing people, I always manage to turn the conversation so I can just listen to them and hear about their stories. So feeding on people's stories is something I love. So that's what I did on LinkedIn for many months. I think 6 months or 7 months before I moved to LA. And one other person I connected with that way agreed to meet for a coffee with my husband. We had a cup of coffee, we were sharing sketchbooks, and at some point he was like, "So Tati, what's up with your job search?" And I was like, "There's nothing, David." His name is David Haynes, by the way. If he's looking at this, David, thank you so much. Because what David did that day, he said, he was like, "But what about Wildbrain?" And Wildbrain was a 2D studio in LA, and I had reached out to them so many times because the receptionist was lovely with me. She was like, "I love French people, but we don't need work, we don't need anybody." And I was like, I have reached out to them many, many times. They're not looking for anyone. And he said, "That's not true. They're looking for 2 additional animators for the Ricky Gervais show." And he was like, "This is what you need." He just like ripped off a piece of paper from his sketchbook. He wrote down 3 email addresses of the 3 directors, gave it to me. The next morning, 8 a.m., I did the same thing I had been doing for a couple of months now. My name, my blog, I need work. The difference was 30 minutes later, I got an animation test. I returned the animation test 48 hours later, and the next day I started the job. So that one coffee moment, that one little piece of paper, those email addresses, that LinkedIn connection, these things are what allowed me to get started. Because once I started at Wildbrain, oh man, it never stopped. I mean, it was insane, because they would like ask me to work on the weekends for the same company, but for a different department. Because Wildbrain was doing TV shows and commercials, trailers. So I would work on so many different projects within the same company, 7 days a week. And after that, because word of mouth is very strong in LA, I started freelancing for other studios such as Titmouse and 6 Point Harness and Nickelodeon, Warner Brothers, you name it.
And so you never got an animation test, like with all the jobs you were applying for, you just got one animation test, and that's basically all it took.
Yeah. That's a really good point, actually. I only got this one animation test to get started at Wildbrain, and after that it was just word of mouth.
How many people did you talk to on LinkedIn? Like you said you did it for 6 months, but it must have been countless of chats. Did you video chat? Was it just kind of messages or?
Yeah, actually, I never did any video chat. I think back then, before the pandemic, video chats were a lot more rare. It was just text. Just text, and I think I must have reached out to, I don't know, maybe 15 people. I didn't want to lose track, of who was who. I wanted to make sure I had a good grasp of each individual I was connecting with to really build a connection. And so David Haynes was one of the nicest. Yeah, just starting by saying, "Hey, I really love your work." And LinkedIn was so helpful because I had, first of all, no idea where to move to the US. I just knew I wanted to do 2D animation, but I had no idea which city would actually have any opportunities. So LinkedIn was really what helped me finding the 2D animation studios, because everybody around me in France was like, "Tati, you want to move to the States to do 2D animation? 2D animation is dead in the States. You're only going to find 3D work or FX work." And so LinkedIn was great because it just was able to break all that misconception that people had, And I was like, oh, here they are. Titmouse, 6 Point Harness, Renegade, GoSpot. They were all on LinkedIn, and then you could find the people working within the studios. That's how I found the people and connected with them.
I wanted to switch a little bit over to kind of your approach as a storyboard artist. Like what happens when you're first given the scene or the dialogue? Like what's happening in your brain?
Yeah, when you get the script as a storyboard artist, first of all, everybody works differently. Like at Lucasfilm, even though we all work within the same pipeline on the same project, even my 4 other storyboard artist teammates I work with in the same team, we all work differently. But for me personally, I'm going to spend a lot of time visualizing first. And by visualizing, what I mean is basically when you read a book, when you're reading a book and you like play the scenes in your head, it's just doing that. You read it. Sometimes I'm even going to actively visualize by laying down and closing my eyes and playing the scene in my head over and over and over again. Sometimes I'm going to play it from different angles. Sometimes I'm going to play different versions of it. And other times I can also just like, because I'm such a huge fan of drawing, I'm just going to sketch ideas, posing, expressions that I think would work. I'm going to act it out myself, something I do a lot as a storyboard artist, because the way we do storyboard at Lucasfilm is very animated. We do 3D animated storyboards. And so a lot of that job is actually still animation for me today. So I'm going to record myself just acting certain parts of the dialogue. If I'm really inspired about an exchange between two characters, I'm going to act it out, shoot myself, watch it. If I think it would fit, I can send it to my director so we can start a conversation. I can send him pictures of my thumbnails and sketches so that we can also discuss about that. And it's really, I would say, visualization, sketches, and shooting, acting, or any other references with my own body and face. I think these are very much the first steps I go through usually.
Yeah, when you use your own body, I can imagine that you capture the emotions so much better. You're able to get all the nuances.
Yeah, because as an animator, you're an actor, except you don't use your own body and face. You are using the characters that you draw, and acting and just being an actor is a big part of your job as an animator, except you don't use yourself. You act through the characters that you draw and animate.
You also worked as a director recruiting artists, and I was wondering if you could give tips on people who are trying to get into the industry. Like, what are you looking for when you're recruiting?
For me, as a director for many years at GoSpot, I helped out with recruiting for a few years, and something I realized over time is that I would rather hire someone who's greener and has maybe lower skills, but who's got an amazing behavior, than someone who's got way more skills, way more experience, a bigger resume, but who's got a different behavior. Now, the behavior, what I mean by that is that if you're greener, but you're vulnerable, and by that I mean you can just like, without a problem, raise your hand and say, I do not know that thing, I need your help. This looks cool. Can I learn how you did that? Like, this is vulnerability for me, being able to position yourself as a kid and say, I don't know things and I want to learn. There's no limit to this as far as growth and your learning ability. Now, some folks that I have hired were way more experienced, and as a result, some of them, not all of them, but some of them, with 10, 15 years plus experience working for the biggest companies, DreamWorks, Disney, whatever, they would sometimes be in the position of, I should know that, you know, like, I'm going to show them what I'm made of versus I'm here to learn. And so that results in asking less questions, closing off a little bit more, communicating a little bit less, maybe taking less notes. I mean, taking notes is a big deal. It sounds pretty obvious, pretty basic, but I swear the amount of people who do not take notes, it's pretty impressive, and it really makes a world of a difference. Don't worry too much about your skill set as far as you're very much putting yourself in this mindset of, I'm here to learn, I'm a kid, I'm excited to learn, and I'm willing to ask all the questions I can possibly have. This is going to make you grow so fast that even the senior people I would hire would be surpassed by the greener people I would hire within a pretty short amount of time. Because ego and not asking questions, even if you're excellent, that's going to make you plateau in your growth and your ability to learn. So that is one thing I would really emphasize for anyone who's trying to break into the industry or be the best version of themselves at work, is to be very much into asking those questions. How many jobs did I get for my behavior? Like, how many times was I told, oh, I heard about you? Like, they weren't saying so much like the work you did. They were saying like, oh, it sounds like we heard it was, I mean, just basically comments about behavior. And I was like, interesting. People are commenting on behavior more than skills. And I realized myself, as like I said, when I was hiring as a director, I was also paying attention to the behavior almost more than the actual skill set.
I wanted to touch on what you mentioned about note-taking. Were there any other things about being an animator that you didn't realize were so important?
I mean, note-taking, the first time I realized that was when I had my yearly review with my director at Lucasfilm. And he was like, Tati, the way you're taking notes, it's huge. I was like, I didn't tell him that, but I was thinking, taking notes, so basic, why would it be huge? And then I came to realize, and I've noticed that myself as a director, that a lot of the struggling part of being a director is to have some of the folks on your team forgetting some of the notes or having to repeat yourself. So if you're a good listener, and if you take notes, because these two go together, and by being a good listener, I mean being fully present when someone's talking to you, not thinking about what you're going to say next, being fully immersed in what this person's going to tell you, being a good listener is huge. And I realized as an animator, these behavior traits are just as important as your skills. And they're going to push your skills to the next level. Now, another thing that is maybe more specific to 2D animation, because it's specific to drawing, is something I came to realize that really pushed me, I would say that really helped me to grow faster over time, was to stop being so judgmental of myself. And by that I mean just learn as much as you can about the human brain and neuroplasticity, because our brains are plastic, they're amazing. Every single time you do something you love, what you practice grows stronger. And neuroplasticity, the day I started learning about it, I really shift my way of animating, my way of drawing. I used to be so self-critical. Every single page of my sketchbook was filled with negative, harsh words about my own drawings. Every single page. So as a result, I wasn't having fun while drawing. I wasn't having fun while animating. I was still doing it, but it was a source of frustration and disappointment. So while I was educating myself about neuroplasticity and how the brain works, I came to realize as long as I draw every day, as long as I animate, or whatever is your thing, your brain's doing the work. It's a physiological truth, which is like a huge relief for me. Because now when I draw and animate or work on my storyboards at Lucasfilm, I'm not so much thinking is it good or bad. I'm not having like a positive or a negative judgment. It's all about neuroplasticity. It's all about growing these new synaptic connections. This neutral stance right there just really made me grow faster, because all of a sudden I wasn't having those frustrations anymore, and I was having fun, because I knew as long as I'm taking a drawing tool and tracing lines to draw something, this is growing stronger. Doesn't mean the curve of the progress is going to be smooth and linear, because progress is a mess. But when you get that progress curve, messy progress curve, and you're at a low of the progress curve, try to remember neuroplasticity. To me, it was like huge for my career, huge for my mindset, my behavior, my ability to push through. Because another thing as an animator, but also as any job, what people are going to be really looking for, or it's your ability to push through. When you have a low, to continue. And for me, back then, I used to be so frustrated with my own art, I would stop. Now when I get really frustrated, I remember neuroplasticity, the brain's doing the work, and I keep on going. So that was like a big thing for me. That's why I wanted to share it.
How do you stay inspired? Like, you draw so many characters, you're constantly drawing. Like, where are these new ideas coming from?
Again, neuroplasticity is really like just learning about the brain and how it works is what keeps me drawing every day, because I want these synaptic connections to keep on growing. That's why I draw every day, really. Because what you practice grows stronger. And I want to practice drawing because that's what I love the most. The second thing is I have always been really passionate about human beings. The way they move, the way they interact, the way they look at each other, the way they use their bodies and their microfacial expressions to express emotions, connections, the way they feel, their history, the struggles that they went through, the traumas that they have experienced. I mean, psychology is a huge thing for me. I am fascinated by that. I listen to podcasts about psychology every day to keep me inspired. So why I draw every day is also because I am really interested in people. And so if I ever get stuck and I'm not sure what to draw, drawing people, watching people is always going to be the best way to stop a block. Because all the storytelling is right there, you know. If you think about it, telling stories, making movies, TV shows, Star Wars, all of it, we are trying to make people feel things. And we're trying to emote emotions, to create connections with others. And so if you watch people and you see them behave and you just like spend time paying attention to them. I think it's, to me at least, it's super inspiring.
Thank you so much for talking to us. Where can we all follow you to keep up with all the amazing drawings that you're doing?
I don't have much online. I have an Instagram. So if you type my full name all together, Tatyana Drewry Carvin. So if you just find me on Instagram, pretty much everything is in there. I have a blog too, which is pretty old, but it's taty555.blogspot.com. And that's pretty much it for me.